Just why Tony thought this was a shale was that basically when you run your hands across it, it's very, very smooth, and if you try and get it down into its constituent parts, you actually don't get any sand grains or even any silt. It's very, very smooth when you break it apart, when you rub it apart, and that means that it's made up of extremely small particles, which leads us to think that it's a shale. Is what that also means in terms of water actually travelling through that rock, is that it's quite impermeable to water flowing through it, because there's lots of very, very small grains that are compacted, that have been buried for a long period of time and are compacted very closely, and that means that of the rock matrix, very little water can actually permeate through it. So as Tony said, we'll talk a little bit later on, that most of the water flow will actually be between these beds, or where it starts to weather away, rather than actually through the rock as it might be in a sandstone or a limestone. Okay, so here we are at a nice outcrop of the shale, not too far from where we were just identifying the rock before. So what's interesting about this one is that you can see this orientation of the bedding. It tells us a few things. As you will have heard from Andy's lectures, is that this layering in sedimentary rocks is a result of deposition, which generally happens on a flat surface, something like a seabed or so on. So these rocks aren't sitting the way that they were formed. So there's most likely been some sort of tectonic activity, potentially some compression of this landscape that's squashed the landscape up and tilted these rocks over. So we know something big has been going on. On a smaller scale, as what we can see is that these beds, the plains in between the beds, are often opened up. Water can get in there, and as you can see in here, as water gets in there and it starts to erode away a bit, some dirt can get in there, and soil can start to form, and you can have some vegetation forming in there. Now, as that gets to be a sort of a well-developed, essentially a crack in the rock, but the bed starts to open up a bit, that can become a significant pathway for water, and water can start to get in through the land, into the profile, whereas if this bedding plane didn't exist, particularly in the way it's oriented up and down, water might struggle to actually get into this profile. It might move across the surface a lot more readily. So we'll keep talking about the infiltration of the water as we discover the site a bit more.
All right, well, you can see this crack here in this piece of shale, and so you've had weathering process occurring, and we know that some of the soil forming factors are climate, parent material, and time, but also organisms, and we're hopefully going to discover as we peel back this rock some of the organisms that are helping to break down this rock. So it's a bit heavy, so bear with me a second. But here, look in here, you can see that there's centipedes, there's some yucky looking spiders' webs there, but you can see the plant roots that are getting in between here as well, and those plant roots are helping to weather that rock. And you can see here that there's soil developing as well in here. So if we think about soil and soil development, it really is quite an alive thing. Soils may appear a little bit inanimate, but they're teeming with life.